What's up, music lovers? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel. Today we're doing the second episode of a series I'm calling Artists That Deserve More Love, where we take the time to appreciate musicians and bands that do not get as much attention as they deserve. And these can be bands that have had successful careers that span decades, but get overlooked when compared to their peers, or they can be independent artists that are just getting started. Whatever the case, these are all incredible musicians that make insanely good music and deserve to get more attention. So let's get right into it. Hopefully you'll leave this video discovering some amazing music that you would not have heard of otherwise. And the first artist I'm going to be talking about in this episode is English progressive rock band Renaissance. Renaissance was formed in 1969, and they were part of the wave of English progressive rock bands like King Crimson, Yes, Genesis. They went through a few lineup changes early on, and they formed their first solid lineup around 1970-1971. Beginning with the album Prologue in 1971, this band just released amazing album after amazing album throughout the 70s. I mean, it is really amazing when you listen to all the albums that they put from Prologue up into the early 80s, just how incredible every single one of them is and how much they absolutely crush each release they did. In the first episode of this series, I mentioned how Arch Echo was a band that the first time I heard them, I instantly fell in love with them. Renaissance is also one of those artists that the first time you hear them, their sound is so unique that you are probably going to be right on board instantly. What makes their sound so unique? Well, it's a lot of things. One, it's the fact that it's primarily keyboard-driven music. John Tout is an amazing piano player, and he would often incorporate music from Chopin or Beethoven into his songs. In a similar way to Fleetwood Mac, I think the fact that Renaissance has a woman fronting the band, but you also have male vocals providing backup vocals, lends to a nice sound of the blending of the two voices that you don't often hear in classic rock or progressive rock in general. It's something as simple as that can kind of set them apart from a lot of their contemporaries. The fact that a lot of the band members also contribute to backing vocals is another thing that really helps Renaissance have a much lusher, more rich sound than a lot of the other bands that were from their same era. It just really gives the band a lot of freedom to play around with different sounds, with different harmonies, with different ways of orchestrating their music. And as I'm saying this, I can't think of too many bands that do such a good job of blending so many different styles of music while still creating a cohesive sound. And I also can't think of too many bands that are primarily driven by a keyboard player. This band just has so many amazing songs and so many great albums. I can't go into detail on all of them because this video would last about 4.5 days. But if you are interested in getting into Renaissance, this is where I would suggest you start off. I would say the best place to start for Renaissance is by listening to the entirety of their album Prologue. The 1-2 punch of Prologue and then going straight into the song Kiev is just an incredible way to open up in the album. And I feel like after listening to those two songs, you will either be instantly hooked or you'll kind of say, okay, this band isn't for me. Pretty much every song you're going to hear from Renaissance is great, but a couple other of my personal favorites are Ashes Are Burning, Let It Grow, and The Sisters. The Sisters in particular has a really amazing, beautiful classical guitar interlude that kind of stands out from everything that Renaissance even did. It's much softer, but also epic at the same time. It's a really great song. Another one of my favorite songs by Renaissance is Raja Khan, although I wouldn't necessarily say that that should be the first song you listen to by them, because it is a bit experimental and a bit different from a lot of the songs that they did. It's not really evocative of the Renaissance sound. Regardless of that though, Raja Khan is a badass song that you should go check out after you've already established, yeah, I'm into Renaissance, I want to hear what they have to offer. And if you're a big fan of Genesis, Yes, King Crimson, Dream Theater, Rush, you'll probably really love a lot of what Renaissance was doing. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they just never really took off in the United States the way most of those other bands did. Okay, and the second artist that I'm going to talk about in this episode is actually two artists. They are a pair of Canadian composers named Jeff and Michael Dana. These guys have composed music for dozens of movies, both as a songwriting duo and as individuals. And as for my experience with them personally, I really got into these guys after I heard a couple of the albums they did in the late 90s, namely A Celtic Tale and A Celtic Romance. For these two albums, Jeff and Michael Dana worked together and they created a style that is Celtic music kind of being incorporated with modern sensibilities while still being firmly in like the classical realm. I heard these albums when I was still at an impressionable age, and for me personally, they really not only solidified my love of Celtic music, but opened up my mind to listening to other forms of music like world, experimental, and classical music. On those two albums, Jeff and Michael Dana do a really good job of blending medieval style music with modern film score or modern classical music. They really blend the two together, of old music with new in the fact that these albums came out in like the late 90s, so they're not that new, but compared to what they're influenced by, yes, they are new. Both these guys have had a very prolific career, so if you're gonna get into them, I would say start with these two albums, because out of all the music I've heard from them, these two really are the best. I think it was them being able to be free to do whatever they wanted to, and it really resulted in something special. So if you want to get into these guys, I would just recommend listening to these two albums in their entirety, because they are both really good. But if you want specific tracks that happen to be my personal favorites, I would recommend listening to The Hills of Ireland, The Blood of Cuchulainn, Lament, Defeat at the Red Branch, and Iona. Those are my personal favorites, although there's a couple others. And I know it's a lot, but they're all really good. It's not a style of music that everyone will get into, but if you are into world music, to Celtic music, if you like to listen to film scores or classical music just as they are, you're probably really gonna love these guys. And so for the third and final artist in this episode, I'm gonna talk about a heavy metal band that never released an EP, never released an album, and as far as I know, the only place you can listen to their music is right here on YouTube. And that's unfortunate, because this band I think had a lot of potential to really do great things, and the band that I'm talking about is War Machine. The only recording I've ever heard from this band, War Machine, is from a video right here on YouTube that's about 10 to 15 years old, where they play a couple of their songs live for a radio station called Flash Rock. I remember coming across this as a teenager, listening to these guys and being absolutely blown away, and listening to it recently again for this video, their music is still fucking incredible. War Machine was a thrash metal band from Los Angeles that was clearly inspired by all of the classic thrash metal bands from the 1980s, early 1990s, but they were able to take that sound and do their own unique spin on it. The band managed to be both ferocious and melodic at the same time, and the guitar player and singer, Ozzy, had both a really gruff voice, but was also able to write really catchy melodies. Both guitarists in the band did a really great job of working together, complementing each other's strengths. They were able to harmonize together, trade off solos, and really lock in together when they were playing a riff. The rhythm section, the bass and the drums also did a lot to support them. They really gave the band a different kind of flair. The drummer in particular had some really well thought out fills, and the thing that really makes their music stand out to me is the way that they have subtle influences of genres outside of thrash. The best example of this in the video is for the second song they perform, where halfway through this absolutely fast, thrashy metal song, the band just backs off. One guitar player starts playing this jangling, almost pop guitar riff on a clean setting, and then the other guitar player just starts playing this absolutely blistering guitar solo that sounds like it could have been on a Megadeth album. I just really appreciate that these guys clearly loved all different styles of music, and they were still able to incorporate them into a subgenre of heavy metal that can be limiting at times. As for the guitar solos themselves, the lead guitar player, Ozzy, was incredible. Imagine all the best aspects of Marty Friedman, Kirk Hammett, Dave Mustaine, and Glenn Tipton fused into one guitar player. Those are at least the guitar players that I'm hearing in his solos, and naming off guitar players like that, it should give you a pretty good idea of how good of a player he was. The guitar solos in this band are really incredible, and I've gone back and listened to them multiple times, and I'm still blown away. On a sad note regarding this band and why they never really took off, or why they were never able to do more with their music, judging by the comments in the video, it does seem as though that the guitarist and lead singer, Ozzy, passed away sometime around 2014. It's really tragic and very unfortunate. He clearly was an insanely talented person, and condolences and best wishes to his family, friends, and bandmates. Hopefully you'll go check these guys out. I will leave a link to the video where they're performing in the description below. With that, that's it for this episode of Artists That Deserve More Love. There are so many amazing musicians out there, so I'm sure this is not going to be the last episode of this series. I'm sure there's going to be a ton more. Hopefully you'll go check out these artists, and if you do, let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you like Renaissance? Do you like Jeff and Michael Dana? Did you check out War Machine? Did you like them? But before you go ahead and do that, if you think this channel deserves more love, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, all that YouTube stuff. I know it's a cliche to ask, but it really does help, and it really is appreciated, so thank you in advance for that. I also have other videos here that you may enjoy, and like always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.